Good afternoon. Welcome to another Friday lunchtime episode of the Business Broadcast. Today I've got my monthly regular, Nigel Elkes. Welcome, Nigel.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for inviting me on again. Hello, everybody.
Pleasure. So, regulars will know that at the end of the month, we always do something regarding mergers and acquisitions. And today, our focus is going to be on the buyer's position. So, secrets to buying a business. Often we've been talking about from a seller's perspective, trying to make sure you maximize your price, etc., and making that journey as least stressful as possible. But today we're taking the buyer side. So today we want to make sure that if you're purchasing a business, you're not going to buy a lemon. So as always, if you're watching live, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn Live, please do post your comments or questions in the comments box. It's always lovely to see who's watching live, and we're very happy to take questions as we go along. Super. So just a background. So Nigel has, besides the fact that he deals with selling businesses all the time, every day, he has also purchased lots of businesses before, and that is something that I haven't done. I've done selling business, but I myself haven't bought a business before. So you've done quite a few of them, haven't you, Nigel?
Yeah, I've done several purchases and sort of mergers along the journey. So yeah, I've done it a number of times.
Excellent. So Nigel is a great person to tell us all about the secrets of how we can make sure those purchases are successful. So first of all, let's just set the scene, Nigel. Why would somebody want to purchase a business? Why wouldn't they just want to set up their own? What are the advantages or possibilities of why somebody might want to buy one?
Well, I suppose initially it's quicker actually to get to an established position by buying a business. If you're already a business owner, you may then be looking to grow your own business, so more of the same sort of trade and get some scalability and efficiencies. Or alternatively, may want to diversify. You may be in a sector that may be sort of challenged, and or is the new word pivot. So you may want to pivot into another direction. So yeah, they would be the key ones, and obviously there's some entrepreneurs out there that are on sort of buy and build type of trajectory. So you know, they may be looking to build a group to then sell on. So various different reasons depending on your circumstances.
That's often what we see with private equity as well, isn't it? We often see several private equity focus on a particular sector, build them up, put them all together, then under one umbrella, and then sell on at a higher price, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you know, obviously within private equity, depending on the sort of the organization, they can be great to have as a buy, because they not only fund the growth, but they'll also help you along the way and help you with the growing pains. So we can come on to it later, but that sort of support is invaluable really along the journey.
Indeed. Okay, so the key thing of why we're here today: how do you make your purchase successful? Now, we've already been through this because we've prepped for today. So we've got 4 areas we're going to go through, isn't it, Nigel? So how do we make it successful? What is the first area that you think is the top area to make sure that we have in place to make that purchase successful and we don't waste our money?
We're obviously sort of not looking at the obvious. So you've made a decision. It feels right. The synergies are right with the business, and you're thinking, right, we want to go ahead with this purchase. I think, and probably even before you start looking, I would probably have your core team of advisors in place. And it's not a matter of just sort of thinking, oh, my solicitor's been great. He's been the family solicitor for 20 years and he's a nice guy. We'll use him. You really need people that are, you want an M&A savvy solicitor, somebody who's really been there, done loads of deals. And then when it comes to things like the share purchase agreement, that is drilled down to in the nth degree, that you then go through all the what if scenarios. For example, if something doesn't work out the right way. So the solicitor is imperative. You obviously need a commercially proactive accountant on your side, just like yourself, Nikki. And in fairness, because you've had that industry experience, and also you run your own business, and also you're helping people with their businesses all the time, that again, that vision and experience is invaluable. And the buyer really needs those two as the main pillars. But a third one, I'd always advise, which a lot of people probably don't, is to have some HR assistance in there, so that from the word go, you've got a strategy that you're then adopting and implementing, and somebody is driving that for you as one of your team. So they would be the main pillars that you'd want on your team.
Absolutely. So you've got that firm team there with multiple disciplines.
And just
Yep.
just to quickly add as well, and what typically happens when you're going for a purchase of any size, obviously you'd be looking to raise finance, so you'd go to a finance house of some description. Now, some of the finances houses would want to put in their own accountant or their own solicitor to have a report done and do some of the due diligence. But what I would say is it's imperative to keep your own team in place, on board, and not think, oh, the bank's accountant or solicitor are doing that work. We don't need our trusted, colleague who I've known for years. That also, I see that happen when people are going for financing and then they've had to jump ship with a different solicitor or a different accountant. It's imperative to keep your own team on board who are on your side and they've got your interests at heart, and not you want them to have the bank's interest at heart as well, because they'll all be looking for the success of the deal. But there's different key points within that, and there's obviously a lot of personal things when you're buying a company. So
Absolutely. So number one, make sure you've got a good team around you to help make that decision with the purchase. So what's the next area that we need to make sure happens to make that purchase successful?
I'd probably say it's the period of exclusivity to maximise your usage of that. And obviously there is the thorough due diligence, and what you don't want is a sort of a glorified forecast for the bank, so that then everybody's on side. And well, you do want that, you want it to be a positive move, but the positivity, you don't want to let the positivity overtake the realism
you need to stress test it.
You do, and probably have it over a period of time, to then obviously, we've all experienced recently through the COVID years, and none of us could see anything like that happen. So it is having a little depth within the forecast, and so it's the due diligence and realistic forecasting, I'd probably say.
Absolutely, because actually that was a post that I wrote this morning, wasn't it, Nigel? I'm shocked. So many purchasers, they're spending their hard-earned money, or perhaps the bank's money, uh,
Yeah.
on these purchases, hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds, and sometimes we're still seeing people not do professional due diligence. I'm just shocked. You generally wouldn't go and buy a house without doing a survey, would you?
No, no, that
You want to check the foundations, and you should be doing the same. I'm just always aghast when people don't. So it's really important, because you're going to learn from people, that you want the people doing the due diligence to be people that do due diligence all the time, so they know what to look for, and find those things out. We've got a good question come in, Nigel, which ties in, so Guy's asking, so good afternoon to Nigels, to Nikki and
thank
Nikki,
you,
Nigel,
Guy.
Jens. What would be red flags for you when considering an acquisition? So that's the thing that would come up during the due diligence process, typically, wouldn't it be? So what flags in the due diligence would you go, hey, let's stop?
I think it's actually there are obviously the obvious things, looking at the accounts, looking at the books and things, but it's where there's information that it isn't being offered transparently, or the descriptions are probably weak, and I think generally we'd all spot that, and that would then go with the sort of overall gut feeling of a deal. But what I probably would say is, don't let that time pressure, and equally the structure of your sort of professional fees, sort of push your, don't think, oh, I've spent all this on solicitors and everything, to then carry on.
You don't
If you are
spend good money after bad.
exactly,
Yeah,
because once you've actually bought the company, it's yours, and it's yours to deal with, and you've got to work your way through that. So it's
yeah.
probably what I would say is, it's in the answers of the questions, and not being probably fobbed off, or not being blinded by a great P&L and a balance sheet. It's and the other side of it is then probably understanding the rationale of the person selling, and why they're selling, and drilling down into that. And sometimes when we're speaking to people who say, oh, I just fancy a change, I just want to do, and you think, right, so you're earning X
Fancy a
amount.
change, go on holiday.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I think it's the communication that you
Yeah,
get back, and the rationale. And if you've run your own business for a number of years, you'll be able to spot those. But I think that's why it's good to have that core team in place, so
absolutely. Do
you've
that
all
good
got
due
your eyes on the
diligence.
ball. But
And,
thank you, Guy. Good question.
yeah, and just to illustrate that point, when we were saying about good after money after band. So say you're going to buy a business for £1 million. You've spent £50,000 already with your accountants and lawyers doing due diligence, starting putting together the heads of terms and the SBA. You've spent £50,000. You're thinking, oh, I'm so far in it. But think, that's £50,000. Hopefully you can recover from losing that £50,000. If you then spend £1 million and you lose all of that, can you recover from that? So you really got to think,
I
what can you
think
recover from?
absolutely, and it's a great point, Nikki. And in truth, it doesn't stop there, because if you've bought a dud, the liability of having that
Oh,
dud, and depending on how the deal's structured, and if you've got a all assets debenture across the group, all of a sudden what you've worked for for probably half your life is then at stake because of this. So
Yeah,
that makes that
disappears.
£50,000 not a lot of money. So if you're not, if you be prepared to step back at any stage, if you're not comfortable with it, because it's a whole lot more uncomfortable the other side. And we've seen it. We've seen people buy businesses back. We've seen people not deliver, with payments and things, and so it happens. So at any point, I think, be prepared to step back and be prepared to spend that money and lose the smaller amount as opposed to the bigger picture.
So the next area we were discussing this morning. So we've got team, got to have that good team in place to do the good deal. Got to do thorough due diligence to make sure it's the right deal. And then we were talking about deal structure. So let everyone know what do we mean by that?
Each deal will sort of have a heads of terms, which will then detail what the total consideration of the purchase is, what the purchase contains. So in this case, the sort of the company reg number, any subsidiaries, and also then the sort of service contracts of key employees. But the actual structure, so that they all form part of the structure, but probably the most initial relevant bit is how, when you're parting with your money. So not everything would be paid for on day one, very rarely. Obviously, the sellers would like that, but in fairness, any sellers would know when we have our initial meetings with them, we sort of say, it's very unlikely that it's totally unlikely you'd get everything day one. Typically, probably about 50 or 60%, something like that, would be a typical day one payment. And then there'd be either deferred payments on either a 6 monthly or a year anniversary, and trying to keep the payments really, from putting a buyer's hat on, as long as possible, because obviously then that helps cash flow. It also keeps the seller's interest in the proposition, but also if it's performance based, which as a buyer you would try and negotiate, but a lot of obviously sellers wouldn't want that because basically it's in somebody else's ownership, so it's hard to do that. But if you could get it performance based, all the better. But it's just making sure that your opportunity is what it is, and so spreading the payments, but also making sure all the guarantees and warranties and everything are there covered, really. So your £1 million is watertight as much as possible, and hence that's why you want a solicitor who's very much involved with the commercialities of mergers and acquisitions, and unfortunately not the family friend who's done the house conveyancing or different things on a more personal level if they haven't got M&A experience. But as I said, still have your own solicitor on board as part of your trusted circle, because they'll have a lot of life experiences to help you along the way.
Okay, before we go into the next crucial part of what you need to have in place to make that deal successful, Nick has come up, has put through a question. Nikki and Nigel, what are some of the broad metrics used to value a business when you're looking to acquire? So that's a good point, because obviously, how do we know that £1 million is the right deal?
Yeah, no, I mean, that is a good question. He didn't mention that to me before, actually. He should have prepped me. there's a sort of generally our starting point would be a multiple of the profits of the business, the EBITDA, and so we would then, depending on the size of the business and the sector, it would have a value. And that really, you'd look at comparisons or a knowledge of comparisons as to how you would then ascertain the value. The smaller the business, the more dependent on the owners there are, the lower the multiple. Some sectors, if they're challenged, they would be, or the longevity of sectors, they would then be lower. But if you're talking a company with a strong future and a good, repeatable, robust income stream, then they'll be higher. So they're the
Yeah,
broad factors.
absolutely. You know, you're going to get the ones that are, you know, not a very buoyant sector, and you know, perhaps have reliant upon just only a few clients, etc. You're going to be looking at lower multiples. The more interesting, the more amount of growth, the higher, you know, the bigger the multiple you'll see. You might even see like a 15 multiple. And that's what most deals are done, are on the EBITDA. You do get the occasional deals that are on revenue, or if they are on sorry, say a technology business or
Sure.
some other innovative type business, it may be the valuation will be on something else. It will be on the technology that they've developed, the IP, the amount of users and things like that. But those are very specialist areas, which we can go into if we have longer time, but not today. So crucial. So I hope that answers your question, Nick. So just to finish the point on the things that you need in place to make that purchase successful, there was a really key thing that we put in. So it's something that you need on day one. So remind me, Nigel, what was that?
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's really. That's really the sort of the first 100-day plan, to have that nailed on, to know exactly what you're doing when you open the door on day one and walk through. And it's really within that, it's all the functioning bits of the business, and it's understanding those. And as much as you can sort of grasp during the period of exclusivity and the due diligence, and make it be really nosy about everything in that process. And so your day one plan is it is detailed, and you know exactly who are on side, and really the responsibility of your core team and what they will be doing. And probably the key part of a lot of businesses is it's well, it depends on the business, but generally the team, the employees are a key part. And it's really to sort of get to know them as quickly as possible, assess the situation as quickly as possible, you know. And in truth, you want to know you've got a strong team behind you. So that's why I sort of said at the beginning, the HR element is key, and that should be introduced within due diligence process. Although obviously the banks and the finance houses don't need that, but for your own peace of mind, I think you should do it. And you know, obviously, what's also key in that is then knowing who the key contacts are and the key clients, meeting those, same with the suppliers, and then getting as much of an understanding of the business as you can during that initial 100 days. And in fairness, it shouldn't stop at the first 100 days. Your plans should be quite detailed, because then you're ensuring your £1 million investment has the best chance of succeeding. So
Yeah, so with all of those things, put together a 100-day plan. You know, Be like the US president. Put those first 100 days are super key. They're your honeymoon period. You got to do all of that work in the first 100 days, lay the foundations. Oh, I'm back to foundations. I've gone a whole circle. Absolutely. So we covered all of that, didn't we? So in the 100-day plan, assessing your staff, meeting the key clients, meeting the key suppliers, ensuring all the procedures and processes are in place to manage business, and making sure that you then assign who is your core team, isn't it?
Absolutely. The
Fantastic.
core team is key.
Okay, so just a quick summary. So the process is going to be, make sure you've got your key team for the purchase, do your due diligence, make sure you have the right deal structure for you, and then put your 100-day plan in place. With those 4 things, should hopefully, fingers crossed, be a good purchase. So now we've only got a few minutes left. So I wanted you to go through then. You've got your top 3 tips. We always save the biggest tips to the end, don't we, to keep you listening. So
we do.
The top, if you just had to say 3 things to make sure that deal works, that your purchase is good and doesn't lose money but makes money, what are the 3 things?
We've obviously covered it, but very quickly, it's a defined plan. It's strong due diligence, which goes over and above what a bank would want, and would include, your core team looking at the business and a HR plan. And it has to be deal structure. Make sure your deal is structured properly.
Tie in those key people.
And with the sellers will want to sort of leave the business as quickly as possible, and it's to ascertain and certainly have the flexibility to be able to keep the previous shareholders involved, really, as long as you need them. But if you're diversifying or going into an area that you're less familiar with, then I think it's imperative. If it's more of the same type of business that you're absorbing, then maybe slightly less so, because you'd know it yourself.
Super. So get your A team, make sure that includes HR, because you need to make quick decisions on people, because it costs you money. Tie in these key people, do your planning, and then we had our final extra little tip, wasn't it? Any niggles, don't buy.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't do it. Just don't do it.
100%. You go with your gut feel. Your gut feel will be right. And if there's the negative bits along the way, bear in mind, no situation is going to probably be 100% perfect. But if it's really where things aren't disclosed or things aren't transparent, as when we covered Guy's question earlier. So they're the things to sort of be aware of. And secondly, I think when you're assessing your core team, and you may have a core team in place, but that can be on a couple of levels. So your trusted accountant can be there on regular meetings, financial director, financial controller, as part of the everyday eyes and ears for the business. So they're on your side. So yeah, apologies, we jumped around a little bit, but there's a lot to get through.
Really a lot there. So you can contact Nigel through LinkedIn if you've got any follow-up questions, or he's always happy to chat through and give advice. So do contact him through either the business board or through succession planning. Do look at our lovely swanky new website, succession-planning.co.uk, because you can see there's some general tips and things. It's still building up the content though, but also there's some businesses that you never know, if you do want to dip your toe in, some businesses there to purchase. So
I think it's just to
Fantastic.
quickly add, it's always worth a chat. It's always good, and it costs
Oh yeah,
nothing to talk. So
absolutely. Absolutely. In these days, virtual lunches, it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't even cost you a price of the lunch.
exactly, yeah. No, it's nice and easy.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much today, Nigel, and I hope that was useful for everyone, and hope that saves some people stop spending money on purchases that might not be so good. But hopefully, then you
Hopefully,
will spend the money on good purchases that you do make money from.
absolutely.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So, pleasure. So next week, I we'll have to double check. I think we are talking with Kim again regarding sleep, which is a key thing. Do a bad deal, you're not going to sleep. So, and you want all the employees to go sleep. So I'm pretty sure it's a sleep one next week. But do look out on my LinkedIn profile, because don't worry, I will be shouting out about what it is next week. But as always, we'll be seeing you at 12:30 again next week for the business forecast. And thank you and goodbye from Nigel.
Cheers. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Cheerio.